Something falls out of the sky over a village in southern China. It's burning in broad daylight, dropping fast enough that the sound can't keep up. People stop and watch as it comes straight down toward the rooftops, intact, accelerating. When it hits, the flash lights up the hillside and the ground shakes beneath nearby homes. Flames keep climbing after the impact. This isn't debris from a crash. It isn't a malfunction caught on camera. The launch happened hundreds of miles away. What's falling here is part of a rocket that already did its job. It belongs to China's space program, and it was allowed to come down here. As impressive as the footage captured looks, such an accident is not uncommon in China. In fact, people under the flight path are sometimes warned in advance. Given the possibility that some spent rocket hardware could come down near inhabited areas, and debris zones are planned in advance, this is done in an effort to avoid disasters. Being warned, however, does not make anyone immune to the possible violence these events may provoke. And yet, cases like this aren't expected. This is mainly because China built 3 of its 4 main launch facilities hundreds of miles inland as part of a Cold War strategy. By keeping these facilities away from coastlines, where Soviet or American forces could strike more easily, they shifted the risk onto their own population. This isn't unexpected, as the logic at the time treated the protection of military secrets as a higher priority than reducing the chance of civilian casualties. In modern conditions, that same geographic advantage has reversed. With more launches scheduled and more payloads in the pipeline, what was once a distant risk has become a direct hazard on the ground. The rocket booster falling from the sky on January 12, 2018, proved that space operations were running on schedule and as intended. On that day, at 7:18 a.m. local time, a Long March 3B rose from the Xishang Satellite Launch Center. It carried 2 navigation satellites. After the first minute of flight, it shed hardware as designed and continued out toward the Pacific Ocean on a 4-hour climb to deliver its twin satellites into a 13,350-mile orbit. According to Beijing, the mission reached its target on time. Chinese officials described it as a well-executed launch, and the rocket placed new navigation satellites into orbit, adding them to the country's expanding Beidou navigation system. These are the systems that keep ships on course across oceans and guide aircraft through crowded air routes. In military terms, these are the signals units use to coordinate movement and hold drones in stable positioning. And that is why China continues to accept the risk created by inland launches. However, the story does not end once the booster hits the ground. The footage shows the real issue unfolding in real time. Locals captured videos of the crash from different angles. One such record shows the booster as it falls out of the sky and drops behind a line of buildings. It's close enough that rooftops and treetops are visible during the descent. The camera maintains clear focus as it stares at the area, waiting for the impact, fixed on the empty patch of hillside as the sound catches up. Another angle captures the aftermath as people gather around the wreckage. The booster can be seen on the ground, with flames erupting from one end of the debris, while the other end is so hot it shines bright red. Some screams cut through the audio as people shout warnings to each other. Most of this comes from the surprise of witnessing something so large landing so close to where they live. The other reason fear has taken hold of some of the witnesses is, of course, proximity. If the crash happened this close to an inhabited area, that means the impact zone could very well have occurred between homes, roads, or even people. Besides, the intensity and longevity of the flame burning signal that something inside the booster is still reacting, most likely a dangerous chemical. Had this booster fallen on uneven ground, the hillside itself could become as unsafe as the machine. With a helping of loose dirt, the burning debris and metal could fall down into the village and cause heavy damage to both people and property. And yet, the most dangerous part comes from the smoke, which can be easily spread over the same air people are breathing. Long March boosters, like the one in the footage, use hypergolic propellants, such as nitrogen tetroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine, since they are chemicals that ignite reliably on contact. To someone standing nearby, the plume can resemble normal smoke from a fire. And as the close-up footage reveals, there's no clear perimeter, nor is protective equipment being worn by the villagers approaching. Each step toward the wreck increases the peril of breathing contaminated air or of touching debris or soil already tainted with residue. Thankfully, no casualties were reported. However, China has already seen what happens when a Long March doesn't come down on an empty hillside. In February 1996, a Long March 3B lifted off from the Xishang Satellite Launch Center and then straight off course seconds after launch. Instead of climbing away, it dropped into a nearby village. Official reports indicated that 6 people had lost their lives due to said incident, with dozens more having been injured or having lost their houses in an instant. Spaceflight might have been sold as the future, but for the people living under the flight path, it can feel like the future is happening to them. China's response took its time. After events of this nature, official details stayed limited. Even if there wasn't any documented attempt to cover up the facts, the pattern of limited public detail was very noticeable. The uneven way in which information was disclosed, with an emphasis on the satellites added to the Beidou system, created an information vacuum that allowed the accident to subside amid rumors. And yet, there is an actual effort to improve the situation for both sides of the coin. China is undertaking a modernization effort that will affect how launches are conducted from now on. Officials highlight the significant transformation and modernization that hardware and infrastructure have undergone lately. They assert that China's space program has adopted a new strategy going forward, focused on advanced rockets and launch facilities that aim to leave outdated practices in the past. Over the last decade, modernization has included a new generation of rockets, namely the Long March 5, 6, and 7, which are powered by propellants that move away from older hypergolic mixes that made downrange debris so hazardous. Specifically, it manifested as coastal construction. The push to modernize didn't start after Guangxi, as it was already underway 2 years prior. In 2016, China brought the Wengchang spacecraft launch site online on Hainan Island, with open water downrange. Rockets departing from Wengchang climb out over the sea, which means hardware discarded early in flight is far more likely to fall into the water instead of near homes and farmland. The shift also changes how China's space program is perceived by the outside world. Coastal launches frame the program as more controlled and modern, even as the country continues to rely on inland sites for a large share of its missions. Wengchang also became the launch site for newer heavy lift missions tied to Long March 5 and newer generation flights tied to Long March 7. Still, in July 2017, a Long March 5 suffered a major failure during flight. Such a setback is a reminder that risk cannot be eliminated from space programs like these. Even modernization demands to be put to the test. Despite all this, China continues to operate its inland sites. As dangerous as they can be, Zhuchan, Taiyuan, and Xishang remain active because they already have the towers, roads, factories, trained teams, and established flight corridors to support successful launches. Even more so, given that the demand to continue the program has risen with the growth of communications networks and the national projects that require them. That demand forces China to launch more often, and it also forces the program to manage how those launches look. In the years after 2021, China's coastal spaceport at Wengchang on Hainan took a larger share of major missions. Nowadays, when hardware is discarded early in flight, it's far more likely to splash down at sea. That doesn't mean launches have become entirely safe. For instance, the core stage of a Long March 5B fell back through the atmosphere without a controlled re-entry plan. U.S. Space Command later confirmed it came down over the Indian Ocean. Critics, such as NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, called it irresponsible. He described it as, quote, "Once again, the People's Republic of China is taking unnecessary risks with the uncontrolled rocket stage re-entry of their Long March 5B rocket stage." Then, in June 2024, footage circulated online showing rocket debris coming down near a village in southwest China, with a visible cloud rising after impact. The details varied by report, but the scene kept mentioning the same details that gave the 2018 footage its edge. Once again, it all happened over rural terrain, with civilians close to the fall zone and a plume of fire carrying the biggest hazard. Just a year later, in January 2025, a Long March 3B successfully launched a satellite from Xishang. One of its strap-on boosters fell back to Earth near a home in Guizhou. As the mission succeeded in orbit, a dangerous booster came down once again where people live. To make matters worse, the debris problem wasn't confined to China's own territory. In August of that same year, officials in the Philippines criticized a Chinese Long March 12 launch after reports of possible rocket debris near Palawan. China's space program is real. The capability is real. The progress is real. Rockets leave the pad on schedule, payloads reach orbit, and new satellites lock into place above the planet. All that notwithstanding, the older network continues to operate in the interior, posing a risk to people on the ground, even if in recent years, China has taken visible steps to reduce that risk. As launches keep happening in quicker succession, the question remains the same. Where will the next booster land, and how close will it be to homes or people? Space is the future. Gravity makes sure the future comes back down.